For decades, Israel and Iran have waged a shadow war, a clandestine struggle fought on multiple fronts, far from the glare of conventional battlefields. This conflict, simmering beneath the surface of regional politics, has shaped the Middle East and defined the security landscape for years. Proxies, acting as extensions of state power, engaging in asymmetric warfare across borders. These groups, often armed and funded by their patrons, have become key instruments in the ongoing power struggle. Cyber attacks, crippling infrastructure and stealing vital information have become commonplace in this modern arena of conflict. The digital realm offers a new battleground, where anonymity and deniability blur the lines of engagement, and covert operations, carried out by shadowy figures operating in the shadows, seeking to undermine the enemy through sabotage, espionage and targeted assassinations. These actions, often shrouded in secrecy, add another layer of complexity to the already intricate conflict, rooted in deep ideological divides and clashing ambitions. The fundamental differences in their worldviews and strategic goals have fueled the animosity between these two nations for decades. Since its 1979 revolution, Iran has refused to recognize Israel, viewing the Jewish state as an illegitimate entity occupying Palestinian land. This stance has been a cornerstone of Iranian foreign policy for over 4 decades. Backing groups like Hezbollah, providing them with financial support, training and weaponry to challenge Israel's dominance in the region. Hezbollah, a powerful force in Lebanon, has become a key ally of Iran in its proxy war against Israel. And Hamas, further complicating the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and fueling instability in the Gaza Strip. Iran's support for these groups has been a major point of contention with Israel and its allies. While Israel sees Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat, the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran has long been a red line for Israel, which views it as a direct challenge to its security and survival. Sabotage and assassinations, often attributed to Israel, have been a recurring feature of this shadow war, aimed to slow Iran's nuclear progress without sparking all-out war. These covert actions, while effective in the short term, have also carried the risk of escalation and retaliation. But as Iran neared nuclear breakout capability, the point at which it could rapidly produce nuclear weapons, Israel's calculus shifted. The threat became too great to ignore, forcing Israeli leaders to consider more drastic measures. The October 2023 Hamas attack on Israel, with its unprecedented scale and brutality, shattered its sense of security, exposing vulnerabilities and raising profound questions about its defense capabilities, and emboldened Iran's proxies, escalating regional tensions. The attack served as a catalyst, pushing the region closer to the brink of a wider conflict. For Israeli leaders, the combination of vulnerability and Iran's nuclear advances created an intolerable situation, demanded decisive action. The time for restraint was over. Israel felt compelled to act to protect its very existence. In June 2025, the conflict erupted into open warfare, a culmination of years of simmering tensions and escalating provocations. As Israel launched a direct military offensive against Iran's nuclear infrastructure, the strikes were precise and devastating, aimed at crippling Iran's ability to produce nuclear weapons. The shadow war was over. The era of covert operations and proxy battles had come to an end. The region now faced the reality of direct confrontation. The stakes were higher than ever, and the future of the Middle East hung in the balance. On June 13, 2025, a date that would be etched in the annals of Middle Eastern history, Israel launched a massive, coordinated air campaign, a meticulously planned operation years in the making. The scale and precision of the assault were unprecedented. The primary target, Iran's sprawling network of nuclear sites, facilities suspected of being at the heart of a clandestine weapons program. The Israeli Air Force deployed its most advanced weaponry, including US-supplied bunker-buster bombs, designed to penetrate deep underground fortifications. The first wave of attacks focused on Natanz, a key uranium enrichment facility, followed swiftly by strikes against Fordo, a deeply buried and heavily defended site, and Isfahan, a research and development hub for Iran's nuclear ambitions. For the first time in decades, the simmering tensions between the two nations had erupted into open warfare. In a parallel campaign, Israel openly targeted and killed, in a series of daring operations, key Iranian nuclear scientists, the brains behind the country's nuclear program. The goal was clear, aiming to cripple the program's intellectual core and set back its progress for years to come. Iran retaliated swiftly and fiercely, launching a barrage of missile and drone attacks, targeting major Israeli cities, sending shockwaves through the country. The attacks tested Israel's vaunted air defenses, particularly the Iron Dome system, and sending civilians scrambling for shelter as sirens wailed across the nation. The intense 12-day conflict, a period of relentless attacks and counterattacks, left both nations reeling, their infrastructure damaged, their economies strained, and their populations traumatized. Israel claimed major damage to Iran's nuclear program, asserting that it had significantly set back Tehran's ambitions, while Iran vowed to rebuild its damaged facilities and continue its pursuit of nuclear technology. The campaign unequivocally demonstrated Israel's military reach and its willingness to use force to protect its perceived interests, but it also left the region on edge with tensions higher than ever before. The threat of further escalation loomed large, casting a shadow over the already volatile region. Civilians on both sides of the conflict, innocent victims of geopolitical maneuvering, faced a terrifying new reality, living under the constant threat of attack. The long-simmering shadow war had finally erupted into a direct state-on-state conflict, with devastating consequences. The Middle East had entered a dangerous new chapter, one fraught with uncertainty and the potential for even greater conflict. A fragile US-brokered ceasefire was set for June 25, but the hours before and after were marked by last-minute strikes and mutual accusations. Israel launched a final airstrike near Tehran just before the truce, signaling its resolve. Iran denied violations and accused Israel of continued aggression. Hours later, an Iranian missile killed 4 civilians in Beersheba, with both sides blaming each other for breaking the ceasefire. The truce barely held, thanks to urgent US intervention. The episode exposed the deep mistrust and volatility between the two nations. The ceasefire was a pause, not a resolution. Any incident could reignite war. Both sides positioned themselves as victims, fueling a cycle of blame. The region remained on a knife's edge. The United States found itself in a particularly pivotal and undeniably complicated role during this period. Its actions, or lack thereof, carried significant weight, influencing the trajectory of the conflict and the broader geopolitical landscape. Initially, the U.S. demonstrated its support for Israel's military operations by providing crucial resources, including bunker-buster bombs, designed to penetrate deeply fortified structures. This decision signaled a clear alignment with Israeli security concerns and objectives. However, as the conflict escalated and the humanitarian toll mounted, the U.S. quickly pivoted, scrambling to broker a ceasefire and de-escalate the situation. This shift reflected a growing awareness of the potential for regional instability and the need for a diplomatic solution. President Trump's administration navigated this complex situation by walking a delicate diplomatic tightrope, attempting to balance competing interests and priorities. The administration's approach was often characterized by a degree of unpredictability, adding another layer of complexity to the crisis. Publicly, the administration urged restraint from all parties involved, while simultaneously holding both sides accountable for any violations of international law or ceasefire agreements. This dual approach aimed to project an image of impartiality and responsible leadership on the global stage. Back in Washington, the crisis ignited significant political turmoil, exposing deep divisions within the government and among the American public. The handling of the situation became a subject of intense debate and scrutiny. Democrats in Congress voiced strong demands for greater transparency regarding the administration's actions and questioned the overall effectiveness and ethical implications of its chosen strategy. They sought to hold the executive branch accountable for its decisions. As the crisis unfolded, calls for more robust congressional oversight grew louder, reflecting a desire to ensure that the administration's policies were aligned with American values and strategic interests. The situation highlighted fundamental divisions within American society regarding the appropriate use of military force in international conflicts and the extent of U.S. involvement in the Middle East. Ultimately, the U.S. found itself acting as both a participant in the conflict through its support for Israel and a mediator, attempting to bring the warring parties to the negotiating table. Despite these efforts, the long-term strategic objectives of the U.S. in the region remained somewhat unclear, leaving many observers wondering about the future direction of American foreign policy. President Trump's personal intervention played a significant role in halting the immediate escalation of the conflict, preventing a further descent into widespread violence. However, his often unpredictable rhetoric and a perceived lack of a coherent long-term strategy fueled considerable uncertainty among both allies and adversaries alike. America's response to the crisis revealed deep and persistent domestic divides regarding its role in the world and its relationship with key allies in the Middle East. The unfolding events left both international allies and potential adversaries questioning the consistency and reliability of U.S. foreign policy and wondering about its next strategic move in the region. Ultimately, the fragile stability of the region now hinges, to a significant extent, on the effectiveness and credibility of U.S. diplomatic efforts in the days and weeks to come. After the strikes, Israel claimed overwhelming success. Key sites destroyed, enriched uranium buried, and Iran's program crippled. U.S. intelligence, however, painted a more cautious picture, suggesting only a temporary setback. The fate of Iran's uranium stockpile remains uncertain. Much may have been moved to secret locations before the attack. Experts warn that knowledge and expertise can't be bombed away. Iran could eventually rebuild. International agencies stress that only diplomacy and inspections can provide lasting security. The strikes may have bought time, but also risked pushing Iran's program further underground. The world was left questioning whether the operation delayed or deepened the nuclear threat. The debate over the true impact raged on. The conflict transformed Israeli politics. Netanyahu, once embattled, rallied the nation and regained support by striking Iran. The offensive shifted focus from past failures to a narrative of strength, boosting his standing. Yet challenges remain. The Gaza war grinds on, humanitarian crises deepen, and Netanyahu's coalition is divided over next steps. In Iran, the regime projected unity and defiance, vowing to rebuild and further limit cooperation with nuclear inspectors. Hardliners gained ground, arguing that compromise with the West is futile. The attacks may have hardened Iran's resolve to pursue nuclear weapons as the ultimate deterrent. Both leaders face new pressures at home and abroad, with the risk of further escalation ever present. The political fallout is still unfolding. Ordinary people bore the brunt of the conflict. Air raid sirens, missile strikes, and constant fear became daily realities. In Israel, 28 civilians died, and millions endured days in bomb shelters, deepening national trauma. In Iran, over 600 were killed, many civilians near targeted sites, fueling anger and grief. The strikes also triggered a wave of repression in Iran, with executions and crackdowns on dissent. For both societies, the war left scars, visible and invisible, that will last for generations. The human cost underscored the tragedy of state conflict. As the dust settles, the Middle East stands at a crossroads. Fragile ceasefire or catastrophic war. The taboo of direct conflict is broken, lowering the threshold for future strikes. Iran may now pursue nuclear weapons more aggressively, risking a wider regional war. Yet, the shock of conflict could open a window for renewed diplomacy, with the US and global powers pushing for a comprehensive deal. Only robust inspections and negotiations can address the core issues fueling this decades-long shadow war. The challenge: transform a fragile pause into lasting peace, or risk tumbling into the abyss. The choices made now will shape the region's fate for years to come.